Hey, good morning, John. My name's James Wilbur. I'm the reentry case manager at this facility, and it's my understanding that you reached out to your unit manager last week just asking for some reentry help. Is that right? Awesome. Yeah. I see from your file that you're going to be going home in a couple of months. So, one, I just want to commend you. I think it's great that you were proactive and that you took the initiative in reaching out, letting us know that you need some help with some things. And so, I'm going to be working with you today just to really figure out what those areas of need might be. And we're going to be talking about some of your goals moving forward and how our department can best support you in making sure that you have a really viable reentry plan before you go home. So, before we kind of get into those details, I do want to talk to you about that form that you have in front of you. It's a statement regarding the limitations of confidentiality. And I know there's a lot of legal language there, a lot of jargon, but it's really important that we take a few minutes to kind of discuss what this form means, excuse me, because it's incredibly important to me that you understand what your rights are, and so that you understand how um, becoming involved with our department will really work. So that's really important. Okay, so. I know you have the form there, but like I said, there's a whole bunch of language, and I think it would just be helpful to make sure that we're kind of breaking it down and to give you a chance to ask questions if you have any. Is that okay? All right, well, thank you. So, as a social worker, there are certain policies that, I have to follow, certain laws, and even more so specifically as an employee of the Department of Corrections. And so this form really breaks down several areas of limits of confidentiality, and I just want to take a few minutes to go over each one. So, mandated reporting, you'll see in section one of that form, has to do with if you were to provide information or disclose to me abuse of a minor that took place or that may take place, or a child or minor that is currently being abused, I would have to report that. And that also has to do with abuse that might be happening to a vulnerable person. And vulnerable means a physically, mentally disabled or handicapped person, an elderly person, or a person who otherwise is not able to really take reasonable action to protect themselves. Does that make sense? Okay, that's great. So the second area concerns if you were to share with me that you're dealing with some suicidal thoughts, um, that might be um, that might be an opportunity for me to involve some other professionals in the department, because what we want to make sure is we want to make sure that you're safe. We want to make sure that you are receiving the supportive services that you need to kind of deal with some of those thoughts. And so that may include involving my supervisors, that may asking psychological services to get involved, or maybe even the health services unit. And I want to be really clear about, what that means. So it's not to punish you, it's not to be retributive, that's not the goal, right? So when we're talking about, if you're coming in and sharing some of those thoughts, my my responsibility and my desire is to make sure that you are being protected, that you're being given the care that you might need in that given moment. So a third area concerns if you were to disclose to me that you had intents to commit imminent harm towards another person, and that would also be an area where I might seek professional consultation. Again, going to PSU, health services, supervisors. I might reach out to security because again, we just want to make sure that everybody is safe, that you're safe, and that other people are safe. Does that make sense so far? Okay. Do you have any questions for me at this point? Okay. All right. Another area. So since you are an inmate in the Department of Corrections, um, there's some limitations to this. So a court has the ability, if it finds it necessary for whatever reason, to subpoena records. Then the Department of Corrections, including any case notes that I took, would be subject to release to the courts. But I also want to be clear that there are some limitations to that. So in terms of clinical notes, the real meat of the work that we're doing, that if I were to receive that subpoena request, I would have to forward it to the Department of Corrections legal department for their review, but I would have an opportunity to kind of speak into that process and to share what notes I think were relevant or not. But the unfortunate situation here in Wisconsin and within the Department of Corrections is that an inmate's legal and social services file is considered subpoenable, right? So I don't actually have that jurisdiction. That would be a decision that would be made by the Department of Corrections. And then there, also being a prisoner, right? There are some unique exceptions that wouldn't necessarily apply in the community. And so, as a DOC employee, if you were to share with me that you are making or had a plan of escaping from the facility, or that there was going to be a disturbance happening in the facility, anything that would create a risk to the safety and security of the institution, I would also be duty bound to report. Okay? So does all of that make sense? Okay. All right. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to allow me to kind of share these limits of confidentiality. And so I'm going to ask that, you take some time to read that. You don't have to sign it right now, but if you take some time to read that, and then perhaps at our next session, you can sign that and return that to me if that's okay. And if any questions come up between now and then, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay? How does that sound? Great. Thank you, John.